Let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Chuck Kayser, and welcome to Fantastic Farming number 3. I'm joined by my lovely, wonderful friend, Jon Walsh from Tokyo, who's an urban gardener, and I am a countryside farmer working with Midori Farm. Right now, I'm actually up in the mountains at one of my farm locations, my original location. It's a beautiful day. I'll give you a bit of a panoramic so you know that this isn't some virtual background. I'm actually sitting on the river in the mountainside north of Kyoto City, about 1 hour. And today we're going to be talking about the future of food and farming and gardening in Japan. Both Jon and I have some unique perspectives to talk about. Of course, I'm going to be addressing things that an organic farmer might face in the countryside, whereas Jon can talk about what he's doing to support people in the city. I am based in Kyoto, Japan. You can reach me at midorifarm.net. That's my website. And I'm happy to see you on Facebook as well. I've been farming for about 12 years, seriously for about 6 or 7, selling the vegetables and doing it as a job. I'm self-taught. I love to do events and have tours and volunteers at the farm. I also sell baskets of vegetables directly to customers in Kyoto City, and I do offer shipping options available for anybody in Japan. I'm happy to join this event again today and create this wonderful opportunity for people to learn more about what Jon and I are doing. I think it's really vital that people get a chance to hear directly from producers what's happening with their food and the environment. As organic growers, we care about 3 things. Of course, we need to make money doing what we're doing. That's important. But we also care about what's going on with the environment and what's going on with our communities. So both Jon and I are big community builders, and we talk a lot about how to reduce our impact on the environment. Speaking of which, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been doing recently in that vein. Let's see if I can get this set up here. So here we go. Let me move this over a little bit so I can actually play. So some recent activities that I've been doing on Midori Farm. Again, right now I'm in Kyoto, I'm in Shiga Prefecture, up in Kutsuki at my original place. But most of my activities these days have been run in Keihoku, which is north of Kyoto City, although it's part of Kyoto City. It's up in the mountains about an hour north, and that's where I've been doing most of my farming and activity these days. This is a photo of a planting event that I ran just last weekend on Sunday. And we had people come up and learn how to plant seeds. We learned how to transplant those little baby transplants into their own pot, and then how to actually plant those transplants out into the garden. So we had 3 different stages there with kids and adults alike. We planted things like basil and coriander or cilantro in small pots with a whole bunch of seeds. What you can do is take one small pot that you grow 1 seedling in and sprinkle with 10 or 20 seeds full of soil. And then what that allows you to do is grow out those seedlings till they're about a couple inches or about 10 centimeters high. And then you can separate them out and put them in their own pot and grow them out. And I've done that for peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, cucumbers, and things like that. And it works really well with spices and lettuces and things like that as well. Kale also works great. Anything that can be transplanted that's not too big. You don't want to do that with like a kabocha plant or something of that size. It's just too large and hardy a plant to do that. You want those seeded directly in their own container from the beginning. And then of course, after separating them out, you let them grow up another couple of weeks, and then you plant them directly in the farm. So what we did, we planted some marigolds that day. And it was really great to plant those among my cucumbers, because these nasty cucumber beetles, these little orange creatures, they love to eat my cucumbers, and those marigolds put off such a strong smell, it often deters them. And plus it beautifies the farm, which is a win-win for me. Here you see me on the left side discussing how to seed soybeans. And how I start soybeans is I buy these little tiny paper cups. I fill them halfway with soil. I put 1 soybean seed, or 1 soybean itself actually, into cup, and then I cover it with soil to about a centimeter and a half. Then I water those in, and then they start to sprout. And then what I can do is cut a hole in the bottom of the cup and plant it directly into the farm like that. And that gives me two advantages. One, I don't disturb the roots when transplanting. And second, it allows me to protect that seedling from these baby beetles or these yotomushi, these white grub-like things that live in the soil that tend to eat the roots and the stems of baby plants. On the right side, you'll see my great friend and mentor, Tajiri-san. He's 85. He's still driving his K-truck and going strong. He's such a wonderful guy, and I gifted him some transplants of sweet potatoes. Here you'll see us on the farm transplanting those marigolds that I was talking about. Such a great plant, again, easy to grow. Sorry, I tend to be getting ahead of myself here. And John, can you allow Shiomi 2 in? I'm not sure if you can see that she's in the waiting room. Could you allow her in?
Yeah, I thought she was in. Okay, yep, I'll do that.
Thanks, mate. And also you'll see that I'm teaching everyone how to trellis my tomatoes. This is another thing that I like to do on the farm, is give people something interactive to do. What's happening right now? And these tomato plants are well short of harvest, but they need some help finding the trellis, the string that they're going to climb up so that they can grow big, tall, and get lots of support. Whoops. Sorry, I'm a bit past myself. Excuse me, I'm going to escape this so I can close that. Go back to play. There we go. And here you see these lovely boys having lunch, a vegan curry that I served some hard-boiled eggs with. They didn't complain a bit, missing the meat out, which is great for me. And this is a little video that I took on one of my tours. Let's see if it'll play for us. All right, well, that's all I have for my presentation for what I've been doing recently. I'm going to stop my screen share. And I'm going to hand things over to my good friend John here, who's going to tell us about what he's been doing recently. And we're going to get started right now. John, on to you.
Thanks a lot for that, Chuck. That was really good. Especially that last little video with the parents and their kid. That was really good. You're welcome to this fantastic food. Fantastic Farming #3 seminar. This has been going like between Chuck and I for like a couple of months now, and it's hopefully going to keep on going. Yeah, just for those who don't know what I do, I'm Jon Walsh. I'm a urban farming consultant and instructor in Tokyo, and I've basically spent the last 10 years teaching over 1,400 people, including about 800 school kids, how to grow food like our grandparents do, like our grandparents' generation did, which was basically like naturally just using sunshine and water and good soil and nothing else. And I've basically been teaching and setting up over 60 gardens around Tokyo, including at the Grand Hyatt Hotel, the Grand Hyatt Tokyo, sorry. On top of schools, at schools, and privately too, for families that want to learn how to grow their own food at home. And I've also been renting a community garden for 9 years here in Tokyo, which has only been slightly wider than a standard car park. And it's been basically like 3 meters wide by 5 meters long. And just with that tiny little patch, it's turned me into a food producer every summer, where I've just been growing like nearly like between 1.5 and 2,000 tomatoes and 300 or 400 cucumbers and lettuces galore, all these herbs and stuff that's like basically it's way too much food for my family to eat. So I've had to like give it away to friends and neighbors and school and workmates, which has been pretty surprising considering how much of Tokyo is completely covered with concrete. But it is possible to actually become a food producer in a place like Tokyo. Yeah, just before we go on, I've got a few giveaways here for you. If anyone wants, I've got 3 things. First of all is a vegetable growing basics. That's 1 page, 15 key points. That's a freebie. A raised garden growing guide. That's a freebie too. And I've also got my urban farming Bible. This is available for half price. 60 pages, 8 years of experience. If you'd like this, please just write your name and email address in the comment section, and I'll send them through to you later. After this presentation, yeah, just to give you an idea about what I've been up to this spring. You're going to find out a whole lot more about this very soon, but I've basically just been doing one thing, and that's teaching urban farming at schools here in Tokyo. 3 international schools where I've been teaching about 80 students per week, ranging from grade 3 to grade 8. So that's about 7 years old to about 13 or 14, I think. They've all at different skill levels. Some of them I've been teaching for 3 years, so they're pretty good. Others I've just started teaching them, but they're all learning how to basically become self-sufficient and independent urban farmers in Tokyo. So I'll show you some more photos about that very soon. What else? Okay, yeah. So, yep, back to you, Chuck.
Right on. That's great, Jon. I have some questions about your 15 tips. Can you give us some of the highlights of those tips, please?
Okay, yeah, yep, okay, yep. There's basically vegetables don't need to be grown in the ground. They can be grown in a pot. Planting is a container, shoes, gumboots, boxes, you name it. Seeds don't have to be sown according to the seed packet instructions. There's a few different ways that you can sow them to create, to basically sort of grow more food. Sun, basically, like maximum sunshine is the key for most successful gardens. And here in Japan, we've got 2 seasons, and they're pretty good ones. We've got a 3 or so month spring season starting from like about mid-March. It goes until about the start of summer, end of summer basically. And then we've got the autumn winter growing season, which goes from about mid-September, when the temperatures start to sort of cool off post-summer, and we can grow food right until like January. So we've got these 2 like approximately 3 or 4 month growing seasons both sides of the summer, which is pretty good.
That's great. The summer's just too hot, isn't it?
Yep, this is way too hot to be outside here.
Yeah.
Yep, and of course, yeah, and here in Japan, we also get rainy season, typhoon season, which presents a whole lot more challenges. But the rainy season, which is due to start anytime, I think, that's going to be good fun, except for tomatoes, I think.
That's right. They love that sun. But I got to say that while it's very versatile to be able to grow things in containers, especially in the city, it does mean that you're going to have to water your plants more, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. And that's basically because soil in smaller growing containers, like a pot, like dries out much faster than soil in a large container or the ground. So if you're growing food in small pots at home, you'll have to water them much more often just so that they don't die. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, I do a few things in pots myself, and I find that what I usually get at the home center, which Jon and I are experts at home centers. We love home centers. Any questions you guys might have about home centers, please put them in the chat. We'll be happy to address them at the end, along with all your other great questions. But what I find at the home center is some composted bark or wood compost. And what that is, it's very heavy, rough, fibrous stuff that really holds water well. And what I often do is I put a layer of that on the bottom of my container as a sort of a reservoir where the water will kind of it'll keep damp longer than the real loose friable soil you buy for potting soil and things like that. Because that stuff is so light and airy, the water just goes right through it. So I like to make a mix. John, do you have a special mix that you like in your containers?
I just use general purpose soil that's good to use to grow vegetables and flowers. I don't get too technical, but I probably should.
Well, I think that's
Yeah.
good stuff. Do you know if there's anything organic soils available where you shop?
Yeah, there's basically Super Viva Homes home store in Tokyo. I think there's only one of them in Toyosu. They sell a 25-liter bag of organic soil. It's only priced about 100 yen more expensive than the regular soil, but it's good. That's good stuff, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's well worth getting 25 liters.
Also, if you're in the Kansai area, like I am, and you come to a Komeri, Komeri, Komeri Home Center, they also have some organic options available for potting soil. So that's good to stay abreast of. And John, I really like how decorative some of your containers are. You really get creative with the shoes and the chains and the walls and everything else. It's not only growing food, but it's creating something very aesthetic. I really like that.
Yeah, no, there's one key driver like behind that, and that's basically lack of space here in Tokyo. There's not much space, and coupled with the shade created by all the buildings, you've basically got to get creative to maximize the sun exposure for your plants. So that might mean actually growing vertically on a wall, or using a rooftop, or just sort of lifting up your elevating your container so that they'll get more sunshine. So when you live and grow food in the city, you're basically forced to get really creative, like about how you do it, which is good fun. That's great. I love it.
I agree. And John, we should talk at some point about grow lights, because I've gotten into grow lights last winter, early spring, when I made my seedlings, all my little babies for the summer, the tomatoes and cucumbers. I actually seeded them in February, which is really cold, and there's not much sunlight during the day. So I had to buy grow lights that are all LED, very energy efficient. And I wonder if there's something you could maximize, or you could actually extend or take advantage of some more space that wouldn't necessarily be possible because you have a grow light running 4 to 6 hours in the space that only gets 2 or 3 hours of sunlight naturally. So that was something we can talk about at some point.
Yeah, sure. That'd certainly make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want the energy footprint, but we can maybe feel around with that and see what's more sustainable, because I love giving people the opportunity to grow things where they don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we should forge ahead, and I'll get on with my main presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and talk about what I think might be some of the future, some things that we might see in the future of farming here in Japan. And to give you just a little bit of a background on me, I'm sitting on the riverside in Kutsuki-hera, Shiga Prefecture, about an hour and 10 minutes north of my house in downtown Kyoto City. And I've been coming up here for almost 20 years to play. And I started gardening by accident, and it just took hold. And now it's all I want to do. And I'm sitting just 20 meters from my first garden right up there. That was the whole starting point for me doing this. And people ask me sometimes, why organic? And I have to tell them, you know what? I had no idea what I was doing when I first got started, no experience. And I didn't know about chemicals and organics at that time. So when I bought seeds, of course I didn't buy chemicals, because I didn't know what was what and what to do. And I just grew naturally from the beginning. It was only years later, a couple years later, that I learned, oh, people are saying, oh, so you're organic. I'm like, I guess so. And I've really come to appreciate the value of organics, not only for my body or the body of the people who are eating my vegetables, but of course for the environment and for the other creatures who live around me. And also, it's much more challenging. So if you're someone like me who's quite tenacious, likes a challenge, organics is really the way to go. And I think that when I think about the future of farming in Japan, I think, of course, organic is the most important thing to think about. Because if we're to go back just 50 years or so, there wouldn't have been all these chemicals anyway. There wouldn't have been all these conventional farming practices or choices at the home centers or at the shops or at all, because most people would be creating their own materials for fertilizing and composting, saving their own seeds, and building their own soil naturally. They were also doing things like permaculture. And these are things that I think for our future, sometimes we don't have to take a step forward, maybe just a step backwards in time to remembering the value and the ease and the sustainability of growing organically. Because basically right now it's organic versus conventional. And there's a lot of talk about these things. And I found there aren't a lot of hard statistics about the benefits of organic. And well, as an organic farmer, of course, I lend myself to being a bit of a conspiracy theorist. And I don't mean to gush about it, but honestly, to get some of these scientific reports published and out there, it costs millions of dollars. So I gotta say that there might be one stopping point from getting people the quote unquote scientific reports necessary to prove to people the value of organics. For someone like me, who've grown organically and eaten organic for years, I know it's better. But what I say to everybody is try it yourself. Whether you're growing it or not, try buying it yourself and see what if it makes a difference. I think you'll taste the difference. And if not, maybe some of these slides that I have prepared might help to convince you. Now, this is not something that I put together. I took this off of this website here that I put at the top. And it's got the pros and cons of organic farming. Of course, the pros are pretty simple. No GMOs, genetically modified organisms. There's a lot of GMO corn and GMO soy and GMO wheat. And those things just have no place on the organic farm. We won't do it. And one of the main reasons is we like to save our seeds. Saving seeds is a very valuable thing because, again, what you're growing, if you're growing a tomato plant here in Japan, that plant has no business being in Japan in the first place because it originated in South America in a completely different climate. And so in Japan, it's going to suffer. And what humans have done for generations is to keep those seeds and create hybrids or create strains that are stronger for their growing environment. So the tomatoes that you can buy in Japan are designed and crafted and hybridized, or whatever you want to call it, selected for growing well in Japan. So if you get an heirloom seed, like a nice beefsteak tomato, one of my favorites, one of the most difficult to grow at the same time, you're going to want to save the seeds from the best tomato off the best plant you had that year and plant those again the next year and continue doing that. After 10 years, you're going to have bulletproof seeds that are going to produce the biggest and the best and the sweetest tomatoes for you with the most disease resistance in your climate area. That's why no GMOs for us. Organic farmers also support their healthy soil. First of all, they reduce soil erosion by keeping their soil together, by not spreading too much sand or leaves or things like that, not mixing the soil too much. Soil is what we farmers really work in. It is our medium. People say we produce vegetables. I must say, first and foremost, we produce soil. Also, good soil that you put compost in will sequester carbon rather than letting it get into the atmosphere and add to global warming. We keep it in the soil where soil-borne organisms are going to process that and create a beautiful soil to create beautiful vegetables. Organic vegetables are more nutritious and have more flavor. This is mainly because of antioxidants. These antioxidants are what create a super strong plant and create super healthy vegetables. Without them, our vegetables have little taste and less nutritional value. Also, organic farmers are supporting our pollinators. There are lots and lots and lots of pollinators out there that you've probably never seen or heard of. It's not just the honeybee, which is kind of the poster child we all want to save, because of course, honeybees are wonderful, honey is wonderful, and it's all a part of our lives, but we support all pollinators, and not just by not spraying chemicals, which might harm or kill the pollinators, but also organic farmers are often planting things like clover and other cover crops like borage, which have these great flowers that really attract and feed these pollinators in times of need, because we know that without these pollinators, a lot of our vegetables just aren't going to produce. Not only that, but for us farmers, organics creates a healthier working environment. Without these harmful chemicals, we can put our finger in our mouth after putting our finger in the soil, or we can eat something right off the plant and not worry about these harmful sprays that should be washed off, not just with water, but with soap and water to really get a clean, conventionally produced vegetable. So think about that the next time you buy a carrot or a cabbage or a broccoli in the supermarket that's not organic. You should be washing that with soap and water before you eat it. Also, our vegetables, because of these antioxidants and using compost tea, have a higher resistance to pests and diseases. These are very valuable things. When we want to select, if I don't eat meat, I do eat fish. I love fish. I don't know if I'll ever be able to give it up. I just love fishing. It's such a natural thing for me. And when I catch a fish, if I catch a weak, straggly, small kind of fish that doesn't look very healthy, I'm not going to keep it. I'm not going to eat it. I'm going to let that one go and wait for the big, healthy fish. Well, that's the same thing with vegetables. Don't you want the biggest and the healthiest ones? These practices that we organic farmers follow help to create big, healthy, robust plants that will create better vegetables that not only look better, that taste better, but they're better for us. Also, when a farmer has to fertilize their field, they'll have to go to the home center or order online or from JA, which is a big Japan Agriculture Corporation. They've got to get their fertilizers, their nitrogen, their phosphorus, their potassium, and their trace elements. Well, that's all got to be produced somewhere. The supply chain logistics of that are probably quite a lot of carbon, and then packaged in plastic, shipped out with more carbon footprint, and then finally the farmer gets that in a box, in a bag, or in a container, spreads it on their field, and has to throw away that container. Well, that's quite a high carbon footprint just to nutrify our soil. Whereas a lot of organic farmers will create their own fertilizers right on site. No packaging, no transportation, utilizing things that would otherwise be thrown away if not burned. This is a great way to create a circular system on your farm for nutrition. Organic farming also offers opportunities for specialization, which is great. I mean, any farmer can specialize in growing tomatoes, organic or conventional. But when somebody is an organic farmer, they're much more likely to save their seeds and create something that's unique to them and can actually create their own strand of tomato or their own pepper and name it, and keep that cultivar alive and be very proud of what they've created. So it's for people who really like to geek out on growing things. Organics is just fantastic. Of course, organics is climate friendly. I've already talked about that. And it also takes future generations into account. Imagine going onto your farm and realizing that everything you do is supporting your environment, so it's supporting the future generations. It's a wonderful thing. I'm not going to talk too much about the cons of organic farming, except for point 2 and 3, because the lack of special infrastructure might be confusing. Even though we're producing something organically, we may still have to use conventionally produce transportation channels to distribute our vegetables, which of course has a higher carbon footprint, which is why I like to deliver direct to customer a basket of vegetables washed in the river with natural water without packaging direct to your door on my way home. No extra carbon footprint allowed. The second one is the use of organic pesticides and fungicides. When organic farmers have trouble, I tell everybody, it's all about prevention. It's very difficult to cure a lot of problems on the farm, be it pests, diseases, fungus, weeds, and so on. It's all about prevention. However, we all fall prey to some problems that we have to solve on the farm. And when we do use these pesticides and fungicides, some people tend to use too many. And those things in the soil, although they don't really harm the creatures, the bugs, the bees, things like that, perhaps, their high concentrations in the soil can create imbalances that do create problems later. So again, remember, it's almost always about the prevention of it. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about, excuse me, I'm going to have to escape here because I need to move this stuff around so I can read my slides. There we go. So other comparisons. So organic decreases the nitrate leaching into groundwater and surface water. See, nitrates come from fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, or even some granular fertilizers have a lot of nitrates in them because all plants need nitrogen. It helps to create the chlorophyll molecules that help the plant to collect sunshine and produce energy. But too many nitrates can leach into groundwater and be very harmful to humans and other creatures, creating heart disease and blood sugar imbalance. If you use animal manures, organic farming also helps to recycle animal waste back into the farm. There is a lot of available chicken manure and cow manure in this country that otherwise would just be thrown away, which could be something beneficial to your soil. Also, as I mentioned before in the last slide, people with food allergies or chemicals or preservatives, problems with that, might find some ease in their symptoms when they eat organic foods. I tell everybody, give it a try. I don't think you'll regret it. Now, I'm going to have to escape here because I'm just having trouble reading my slides in the full screen. So, but what percentage of farmers are organic? Well, I did a little research and it turns out about 0.5% of farming in Japan is organic, which seems shocking, but actually when I looked it up in the US, it's about the same. So we really need a shot in the arm for organic. Support your organic farmers, buy organic, show your support by doing everything you can because we need more organic farmers who are not only giving us better vegetables for us, they're supporting their environment for the future. John, I looked up New Zealand. What's the organic percentage? I had a hard time coming up with a hard statistic because most of the statistics were about sheep and cattle. So John, I leave it to you. This is your homework for next time. Let us know how many organic vegetable farmers exist in New Zealand.
Okay.
And in Europe, I didn't want to pinpoint a certain country. So I took a broad spectrum. They're really killing it in Europe, 9.1%. Good on you, Europe. That's really great. Let's hope we can all get up to 10% within the next 10 years. It'll really do a great thing for both us, the environment, and our communities. I like to talk about farming for a lot of different reasons, but one thing I like to do is try to encourage new farmers. We need more farmers. I took this again from a website, Japan's farming population rapidly aging and decreasing. And this was from 4 years ago. Since '85, the farming population has shrunk by around 60%. That means if there were 10 farmers in 1985, there's only 4 left. And that just won't do. And I've looked further on this. At the bottom, you can see a link to the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries here in Japan. Every year they put out a report talking about the agricultural situation here, and they usually do it in English. The 2015 report is spectacular, highlighting all the problems here. And the average age of farmer in Japan at that time was 65 years old. So this is a very telling statistic. We need more farmers. Come on, you can do it. And you can do that by incentivizing organic farmers by buying organic produce at the very least. Also, local is better. Why is local better? Locally grown food is full of flavor. When grown locally, the crops are picked at their peak of ripeness versus being harvested early in order to ship them and distribute them. By the time they get to your local store, they are ripe. Maybe you know about this from green bananas being harvested in the Philippines, shipped across to Japan, and in the weeks it takes to get here, they ripen in the ship's hold. They don't get as sweet as they do if they're allowed to ripen on the plant. Eating locally is also eating seasonally, because those strawberries that you're going to eat grown year round in some prefectures, they're grown in greenhouses, climate controlled, and they're not really seasonal, are they? So if you eat local, you're going to eat what's in season right now. Better for everybody. Local food has more nutrients because there's a shorter time between harvest and your table. As soon as that vegetable is harvested, it starts to lose nutrition. So those things that you can get fresh are better. Local food also supports the local economy. Of course it does, because the people in your area are the ones you're giving the money to. It also benefits the environment. It helps you maintain the farmland and green and open space in your community, while at the same time reducing the carbon footprint of transportation. Local food promotes a safer food supply. The more steps there are between you and your food source, the more chances there are for things like contamination. Food grown in distant locations has the potential for food safety issues at harvesting, washing, shipping, distribution, and everything in between. So eating locally promotes a safer food supply all around. Also, if you buy at a farmer's market or from a farmer directly, they can tell you exactly how that food was grown. So across the board, locally is better. One thing organic farmers are having trouble with is making enough money. Especially someone who's a small local organic farmer like me, it's hard just to sell vegetables and make enough to live. So we farmers, we're learning to diversify. Because organic farmers, we just cannot rely on this income from vegetable sales. The market value of a carrot is just too low. I like one of my favorite podcast host, Chris Blanchard on Farmer to Farmer, often says farming carrots is often a race to the bottom, because everybody's going to try to get the fastest, biggest, cheapest carrot out there. So, and that's what consumers want. That's what we all want. We want cheaper is better, right? Well, in some cases, it's just not so. But we farmers suffer, especially we small farmers. See, these small farmers across the world, they're growing some of the best produce available. They can create their own system of fertility, they can save seeds, and really master their art. But in order to pay the bills and raise a family, they have to diversify, which means less time on the farm in many cases. Many of these farmers have second jobs. In Japan, it's called han no han ex, half farming, half something else to make money. And a lot of them are teachers, like I was for a while, and like I'm probably going to be soon, because I'm just not making it selling vegetables again full time. But some of us farmers are trying to get creative and trying to leverage our skill sets and our farms to create new revenue streams. I've been giving tours on my farm. A lot of people have done that. You saw that at the opening. I had a great family out for one of my tours. Educational opportunities. Again, I showed you one of my events that I had teaching people seeding techniques. These are great ways to spread the word and make a little extra money at the same time. Something I haven't done, but I'd like to, is having a direct link to a restaurant, or even creating my own cafe or shokudo in Kyoto City, serving my vegetables raw or cooked very cheaply, win-win. Finally, I engage volunteers instead of paid staff. This helps me keep costs down while keeping my production as high as possible. Now, shortening supply chain is really beneficial. I love selling direct to customer for a lot of reasons, but one big advantage is the consumer will get the lowest price and I will get the highest price. Now, if the consumer is paying cheaper than that, then they're probably buying conventionally produced agriculture. If they're buying organic at the supermarket, the price point will be higher than mine. And if I'm selling directly to a supermarket, what the supermarket pays me will be a lower price point than what the consumer pays me. So it's a nice happy medium selling direct to customer. Now, the last thing I'd like to talk about is rural depopulation here in Japan. It's a major issue if you haven't heard about this, but it may also create some opportunities. As you can see, these articles I took from the Asahi Shimbun and the Japan Times. Japan is dealing with severe rural depopulation. It's really shocking. The little statistics I wrote, by the 2040s, which is just 20 years away, rural depopulation in Japan will outpace that in every single country in the world except Bulgaria and Albania. And that's just unacceptable because the rural areas in Japan are just gorgeous, teeming with opportunities and infrastructure and opportunities for people who love nature and organic gardening. As these communities disappear, traditions and families dying out, and there are a lot of wasted resources, as I said, but also this wisdom that these people have had, how to pick the sansha or the mountain sansai, the mountain vegetables, how to cut wood and what the trees are and what the season means and the insects and everything else. They have all this wisdom that's being lost. But as a small farmer, being someone who's come into these small local communities that are being depopulated, I've found great opportunities for growing vegetables. People are willing to let me use their farms for free because they're just so happy to see it used. And the air, the clean air and water just makes it all the better. And the local people are very interested in getting more young people in the area to help stimulate some regrowth in the population. And they also are ready with a lot of advice and a lot of laughter and a lot of happy faces. The produce has to be transported, however, from the countryside to the city for profitable sales, because you can't really sell your vegetables in the countryside. There aren't as many people, and like it or not, they're probably growing their own better than I am because they've been doing it for 60 or 70 years. But as a resident of downtown Kyoto City, it's on my way home. It doesn't increase my carbon footprint. I deliver to people on my way, so it's a win-win for everybody. And I opened my CSA, my community supported agriculture, or Teikei system in Japanese, so that customers can receive these directly to their door without any refrigeration or packaging, again, with the best price point on both sides. Now, these kinds of opportunities are all over Japan. So anybody interested in creating their own garden or having a second home, I recommend getting out into the country, taking a drive or asking around. There are actually websites you can go on for available houses and farmland and things like that. I recommend it. It's really worthwhile. That's all I have for today. I'm sorry I went a bit over time, John. I hate to cut your time short, so I'm just going to jump off and let you go. But thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please type them into the chat, and we are going to have time at the end to do so. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Chuck. That was really, really fascinating stuff. I learned heaps personally, and especially about the pros and cons of organic farming. That was really, really sort of fascinating stuff. Hang on, just trying to find the right screen. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to be talking about now is also just some key points about the future of farming here in Japan, and I'm going to be covering, hopefully, if I have time, 6 key points. And the first one is school urban farming programs, which I believe is a key driver of the future of basically sort of supporting and building up urban farmers in the big cities so that they can basically sort of become more self-sufficient and teach others. The second point I'm going to be I'm talking about is directly related to this and the first one, which is donations of school-grown food to community support organizations, food banks, charities, that kind of thing, to basically sort of share urban food with people in the big cities that need it. The third point I'm going to be covering is rooftop gardens. Rooftop spaces in big cities is a huge area of potential in terms of like growing large quantities of good food. The fourth point is growing food on streets. I've heard this is pretty popular in France. I'll be showing some photos about that. The fifth point, car parks. How to convert car parks into gardens, and whether it's actually going to be financially viable for the car park owners. And number 6 is directly related to what Chuck was just talking about, which is corporate partnerships, like between businesses and countryside farmers, to make countryside farming more sustainable and more viable as a business going forward. So I'll just get into my presentation. I hope you can see that screen. Fantastic farming. Can you see that? No.
Yep, it's come up.
Come up. Yeah. Good. Good. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So what I basically specialize in is teaching mainly school kids in Tokyo how to grow food like their grandparents did. And I've been doing this now for 10 years. I had no experience and got into it thanks to the Tohoku earthquake 11 years ago, which sort of made me, it totally changed my perspective of where food came from and where food could come from. And the conclusion that I came up with after the earthquake up in Fukushima was that it's a good idea to grow food locally at home. And then I thought it could be good to teach kids too. So yeah, so the first point here of my presentation is educating the future. And this will show you some basically sort of what I've been doing in the last 4 months in Tokyo at different international schools. So school urban farming programs is basically bringing the farms to the schools, and ideally utilizing exposed soil and converting it into gardens. And the main goal of my urban farming programs is to make urban farming a mainstream subject in all schools. And the flow-on effects of that is pretty big in terms of student health, improving self-sufficiency, preserving the environment, and cutting down the amount of toxic chemicals that are used in the food production process. The key objectives of my programs: no added chemicals. So nothing gets, no toxic chemicals get sprayed on anywhere. Training is always completely hands-on. Kids always walk away from my lessons with dirty hands. And point number 3 is critical: get results. That means basically getting the schools to grow lots of food, running events, which you'll see photos of soon, and if possible, encouraging schools to donate food, the food that they've grown to food banks. What do my urban farming programs equip students with? Well, number 1, skills to grow food like our grandparents did. So we're basically going back. We're not going forward, like Chuck hinted at some time ago. It's sometimes good to look backwards to get the answers. I totally think that's true. To grow food naturally, we shouldn't be looking forward, because our entire conventional food production process has been totally poisoned with artificial chemicals. When our grandparents were growing food, everything was organic. And kids will learn basically food growing skills that they'll be able to use and share for life. So it's like learning how to ride a bike. They'll have those skills for life. They'll learn how to keep themselves healthy by growing food with no chemicals. They'll learn how to become more self-sufficient. And hopefully they'll also learn how to teach others, like able to actually go home and teach their families how to grow food. And also a key point is the last one down here, which is I'm hoping to imbibe students with a greater sense of respect for food and farmers and insects. Yeah, so in the last 10 years, I've taught over 800 students at 11 international schools in Tokyo. What do the programs look like? Oh yeah, just a quick point about my programs. I've spent nearly 8 or so years teaching at one international school per season until COVID hit. And when COVID hit, everything changed. And I think my my type of business was one of the few businesses that actually benefited from COVID. And I worked that way. And I think it was basically because so many people were scared to go outside, combined with the fact that we all need food. So if you're scared to go outside to buy food, it's a good idea to have a garden at home. And I think a lot of people realize that. And urban farming worldwide has just boomed. It's totally taken off thanks to COVID, which has been pretty good. So this here is Sesen International School, where I've been teaching since spring last year. This is what their garden looks like. This was last week. And I've basically been working with students to basically dig up grass and make gardens, which has been really, really good fun. And yeah, so they've basically been converting to lawn and exposed dirt into gardens like this one here. This photo was taken this week. They had rhubarb in there. They've got tomatoes, which are unfortunately going to be ready to harvest in a couple of weeks during their summer break. This was another part of their school gardens, just been completely converted in 12 months. Ditto this. At Sesen International School, we've been setting up donation gardens where the food that's grown in those donation gardens are specifically set to be donated to Second Harvest Japan Food Bank in Tokyo. What you can see on your screen now happened 2 days ago on Friday. We basically had harvest day, and this was the first harvest for the school. This was the first harvest, and the kids loved it. They absolutely loved it. They had a blast. They were basically got to eat and take home their own food. And the teachers got involved, and the school has never had anything like this like before this spring. And you can see the photo to the right here. My new business partner Richard, he basically was taking a whole swag bag of vegetables over to Second Harvest Japan to give to them. 8 kilograms this time. This was the first garden vegetable donation from Sesen to charity. And the screen here shows what the students learned this particular season. They learned how to sow seeds, transplant seedlings, make compost, set up insect-friendly gardens, stake out vegetables, set up insect nets and shade sheets, and also how to keep their gardens alive during the summer, which is pretty critical right now as spring moves into summer. Sacred Heart National School is a new client that I picked up last year, and this was a similar project, but basically just converting lawn into gardens. And last autumn we started off with two 2 square meter plots. You can see them both here, so that was quite small. And then in spring this year we upsized. We set up basically dug up 5 more plots and allocated one of them as a donation garden to grow food in for Second Harvest Japan. And the results came out like that. We just had a truckload of food. It was absolutely amazing. And the kids grew it all. Much of it from seed, lots of seedlings. We got tomatoes coming up. We got cucumbers, climbing beans, Swiss chard, you name it. It's like a supermarket. And this school didn't have anything like that either. And this was the first school vegetable donation from Sacred Heart to Second Harvest Japan. This was just a few weeks, this was about 3 weeks ago. 10 kilograms of food. That was nice. Covered a whole table. And if you see the photo to the right-hand side, a elderly Japanese couple walked by and they were interested to see the food and asked if they could have some, and they walked away with a bag of fresh fruit from Sacred Heart, grown by grade 3 girls. Fantastic. Next up is Aoba, Japan, which is in North Tokyo, where I've been teaching for 4 years now. This is a really good project, and the garden size is getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. So we're basically growing more food as the garden expands. And it's been really exciting to see what a group of kids can do when they really get stuck into it. So the photo to the left here, I wouldn't call that a garden. That was just a weed patch in 2019. And we've now converted it into a nice looking garden with flowers. We had paprika, we had tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuces, herbs, you name it. This is the kids getting stuck in. These are all grade 8 kids. So they're about 13 and 14 years old. And I've been teaching some of these kids for 3 years now. So they're very good at what they do. And around the back of the school that gets the most sunshine, total conversion there. We've basically just reutilized or just set up gardens in a stretch of soil in front of this wall that you can hopefully see. There was nothing growing there but trees. Now they've got 30 different kinds of vegetables. And this was last summer. Cucumbers and tomatoes and just massive. It all just took off. That was really cool. And yep, they were transplanting seedlings. They're growing a whole lot of food from seeds and getting into vertical gardening activities, learning about composting and so on. And also learning about teamwork, basically how to work together to get the results that they want. That's sort of pretty critical stuff. Then, oh, hang on, my presentation's got a bit mixed up here. Okay, back. Yep, but it's not all perfect. We have some students who make some pretty big mistakes, like trying to plant a pot. That didn't go down too well, but it was a nice try, I guess. And Aoba, Japan, they've done about they've had about 3 salad harvest events, which are pretty good at. It's a good way to get the kids to actually taste what they grow, because most kids don't like green salad vegetables. So we put on an event, and in this particular case, we invited the entire grade 8 to come out and try garden food that their peers had spent the last 3 or 4 months growing. Washed down with mint tea, mugicha. It was fantastic. This was November last year. Absolutely fantastic. It was pretty cold, but it was harvest. Loved it. And, yeah, the kitchen manager came out and was dishing out food, and the photo to the right-hand side shows the entire grade 8. And okay, so that's the school urban farming programs. 3 schools I've been involved in the last in the spring, basically. And it's gone from 1 school that I've sort of regularly been teaching at up to 3, I think, thanks to COVID, which has sort of sparked a big interest in not just schools growing food, but also pretty much everyone. So a follow on from school urban farming programs is, when you grow too much food, what are you going to do with it? So a key point here is to donate it. And I've come up with a strategy where the objective can be summed up in 4 words: grow some, give some. And that's basically, yeah, so to basically to encourage as many clients as possible, school clients and corporate clients, to basically start gardens and donate a portion of what they grow to charities and community support organizations and food banks to serve homeless people, single mothers, refugees, and people who just don't have enough money or food. What do donations look like? We just basically turn up at second harvest Japan and just hand them piles of fresh food. And most of the food that gets donated to Second Harvest Japan, there's quite a few schools that donate food, doing lots of rice drives and can drives. Most of it's processed, whereas what I'm trying to do is change that and get schools to donate fresh food. And from Alba, Japan, the donations have been getting bigger and bigger each year. This was a real one last November. Okay, that's donations. The next point I'm going to be talking about is rooftop gardens, which is a big potential space for urban food production. Just quickly, critical factors. Rooftops must be structurally sound, must be able to support a garden and gardeners. And they must be safe too. So they must have like fences or railings to stop people falling off. They look like rooftop gardens could look like this. Here's a couple that I've set up. The photo to the left shows Montessori School of Tokyo rooftop garden, Grand Hyatt Tokyo to the right. That's the Grand Hyatt for raised gardens back in 2019. Kindergartens have had gardens installed. This is a nice rooftop garden that I got involved in maybe 4 years ago in Ichigaya, that involves hydroponic growing systems, self-watering planter boxes and raised gardens. Also upside down tomatoes to the left. And this particular office block has a restaurant on the ground floor, and you can see the chef in the middle picking some lettuces to turn into salads. I just heard recently that National Azabu Supermarket in Tokyo has got their own rooftop garden. This could be the first Tokyo supermarket rooftop garden out there. I'm not quite sure, but I think it is. Just quickly moving on, I'm sort of running out of time. Next point, growing food on streets. Massive potential here because streets have so much space. I'll just show you some quick ideas about what is possible in terms of growing food. Just imagine walking down every street and seeing wall gardens like this, where all the food was free. So when kids are walking to and from school, they would see this every day. And when people are just going for walks around their neighborhood, they would see this. That's possible. There's also things like this, just planter boxes, vertical gardens. And the photo to the right is pretty cool. Just large planter boxes by the side of the street. My next point, second to last point, is car parks. Lots of car parks around Tokyo are underutilized. Why not convert some of them, like maybe half or a quarter of the car parking spaces, into raised gardens like this? And to do that, it would be a good idea to make it cost effective. So the idea that I've come up to do that is to basically rent out raised gardens like the one you can see in this photo, to individuals and families for a set monthly fee, maybe I don't know, 5,000, 10,000 yen. And then the car park owner would get that. And as long as raised gardens like this in a car park could generate more money than the car park rental fee, then it would hopefully be possible to convince car park owners to convert at least part of their car parks into community gardens like this. And my last point, corporate farm partnerships, which would help people like Chuck. This is basically about encouraging businesses to get involved financially with countryside farmers to build more sustainable farming businesses. And the key here is to basically encourage entrepreneurs and business people who want to enter the food production business without leaving for the city to either fund or sponsor or take partial ownership of countryside farms and earn profits from the sales of produce. And as Chuck was saying, there's a possibility for farm tours, education programs, and side businesses to be set up at farms such as cafes and souvenir shops and so on to generate more income. And the benefits of doing this: support farming, support farmers, provide more employment for local people, and great PR for companies. Okay, so yeah, that's my bit. If you want to find out about urban farming and how to grow food at home on your rooftop or your balcony, wherever, just get in touch. I'll put my contact details in the chat section very soon. Yeah, back to you, Chuck. I'll just stop my presentation first. Hang on. Back to you, Chuck.
Thanks, Jon. That was fantastic. Well, Naj, I love to see what you're doing, and you go through so many slides so quickly. It's hard to really choose a favorite, but I really liked a lot of your images. They really stand out and they really inspire. I think it's really great what you're doing. Before we open up to questions, and again, if you have some questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat. I have to ask a few myself, if you don't mind. For your farming classes, do you have teaching materials that you create, like textbooks or worksheets or something like that?
Oh, I basically create all of it myself. I received no training for this. I basically taught myself and set up my the entire business from scratch. I've never taught anything formally. I'm not even English, so I've basically been running the whole thing from scratch. I just sort of basically make up my own handouts, large pictures to show up to show to kids. Yeah, it's just a combination of basically hands-on gardening and paper-based resources, because we're outside. We can't really take any like PowerPoint presentations or anything like that. Yeah, it's all self-done.
That's great. I'd love to see them, and I think a couple of our participants today might actually want to see them as well. I know at least one of whom is creating a farming program for an international school in Kobe, and she's a teacher, so she may be someone you could collaborate with, if not just share with. Another question I have is, I saw in one of your slides you had a composter on site.
Yep.
This big upside down cans with a bottomless thing with the lid that you can pull off. Can I ask you, do you have any issues with insects or rats or anything getting in there?
Not yet. No. The school that was CSN. They bought a compost bin.
Yeah.
And they bought 4 bokashi, liquid compost makers too.
Sure.
So we've just started filling up the compost bin. Nothing yet. We got lots of insects around the garden. Sometimes frogs, but nothing crawling out of the compost bin yet.
Well, see, I'm in the countryside, so things like cockroaches and house flies and things like that just don't stand a chance out here. They're just too weak to live in the wild world. But out in the city there, I figure, you might get something like that, but it depends. Let me ask you another question about your composting. What do you put in that composter? Just your garden cuttings, the dead plants and things like that?
Yes, just the garden cuttings. We're basically, we're going to start talking to the kitchen and asking them to basically bring out their kitchen waste, so we can basically compost their kitchen waste to make garden to put back onto the garden, so that we can grow food partly for the kitchen.
I think
so that we can sort of basically create a whole cycle.
I think that's a fabulous idea. And if you don't mind me breaking in with a teachable moment here, please be careful about that, because your garden cuttings, like your dead lettuce plant or, expired broccoli stems or things like that, it's really not going to attract any baddies. It's not. However, when you start bringing stuff from the kitchen, you might have things like banana peels or watermelon rinds or something sweeter that will attract cockroaches and rats. So you've got to be super careful. I think, in fact, I don't know this, I'm going to guess, but I think that's one of the reasons bokashi is so popular here, because that takes those things out of the equation completely, because it's anaerobic. So you might want to experiment with that. And I have one last point about that is you need a source of brown material to balance your green material, or your greens and your browns, or your carbons and your nitrogens, or whatever you want to call it, your dry and your wet. Do you have some source of like dry leaves or something like that that you could use as your brown element?
No, but now that you mentioned it, I'll get onto it for next season.
Well, I
The
gotta
school just
say,
asked me to come
I
back.
bet your schools have trees that drop
Oh,
their
yeah, yeah.
leaves in the fall. There's another way to make a circular system there. Okay, kids, collect these leaves. We'll pile them up over here. We'll use them all year in our composter. And then you'll be able to see what we can do with the food scraps. These leaves, two garbage things that we're going to put together to create super soil and great food. Great teachable moment there for you. One last question or point I had to ask was, you had in slide number 114, you don't have to actually do it, but there's a hydroponic tomato setup with these very ornate PVC, gray PVC pipes. Did you make that?
No, that was made by an American friend who basically set up most of that garden, and he had no experience. He just basically started from scratch, and some things didn't work first time. For example, the PVC tubes. He
Braided,
set
right?
them up
Yeah.
flat.
Yeah.
He set them up flat, and so the water didn't drain. So he had to like tilt them slightly so that water would drain down, then drain down again. And that was something just like you learn when you're doing anything. You sort of learn from your mistakes and learn what to do. But yeah,
There's no such thing as a failure. Just another way to learn not to do it. That's fantastic. Well, I don't have anything else to ask, although again, great presentation, Jon. I'm always wrapped with attention on your presentations, but perhaps some of the people out there, we have some extra time. Brent has just texted, where do you get rhubarb starters in Japan or seeds?
Yeah,
I have no idea. I have heard of some people that you might want to contact. I know Heather Fukase from Nagano, naturally, which is a website. She might be somebody that you can reach out to. I'm going to put her website name in there for you, but maybe somebody listening has some ideas. Somebody.
Sesin, we've had one rhubarb plant growing there that one of the teachers picked up, and she bought it from a home store. It's Happy Honda. No, it's a home store. I think it's in Saitama. Honda. What's it called? There's two words. Honda something. They don't have any home stores in Tokyo. They're outside, and I'm pretty sure that she picked up this rhubarb seedling from there, and the rate of growth was just phenomenal. This thing just really took off. Also, Super Viva Homes in Toyosu, Tokyo, they may have them. I haven't seen them there, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are there, because Super Viva Homes in Toyosu, they're expanding their seedling range every year. It's really good.
That's cool. Well, actually, Brent, I just did a Google search on Amazon, and there you go. Rhubarb seeds, 314 yen. You can get it in a week. So they are available and they're organic. So there you go.
It's a good brand too.
Amazon is the devil, but sometimes they come through for you. What can you say? Yeah, I know rhubarb doesn't do well for everyone. And a lot of people say, so how's your rhubarb? Oh, this year it was good. Last year it was bad, or I can't get it to grow, or mine's always doing great. And Heather at Nagano Naturally, she always seems to do really well with it. So even if you don't need a supply from her, I recommend getting in touch with her just to get some advice maybe. And she's such a wonderful person to talk to too. Are there any other questions? Brent says again.
Basil plants getting attacked. Basil plants are getting attacked by some bugs that don't know the culprit. Okay. Yeah, Brent. About protecting basil plants from bugs, you can probably Google some do-it-yourself insect sprays. They'll most likely only contain a few household ingredients, for example, liquid soap and maybe vinegar. I think you were talking about these last time, Chuck. Do-it-yourself sprays to keep the insects away.
Sure,
probably the most effective. Yeah.
I do. I create a lot of my own sprays. I use a lot of neem oil.
Pepper sprays. Okay.
Pepper sprays as well. Brent, may I ask you, what does your damage look like? And you can unmute yourself if you'd like to have a conversation with us.
So they're just little, they're not little tiny holes. So I don't know. I don't think they're caterpillars because they're really, the leaves aren't that big yet, but just little pinholes. And I tried the pepper spray and garlic spray with a little olive oil and I think soap. And they seem to be doing better, but right now I'm just growing them at home.
Yep. Are they in the ground or in a container?
They're in the ground.
Okay.
In my garden. So I'm at a community garden.
So you can take a look at them in the morning and you can take a look at them at night every day, right?
Yep.
Okay. What I want you to do today is go outside just before night and take some photos of your leaves. Okay. And then look at them in the morning and maybe take same photos and compare the two to see, is the damage being done during the day or is it being done at night? If it's being done at night, I would say your culprit is probably slugs and snails.
Yeah, I'm actually, I've been looking online to create some slug and snail traps with stale beer, kind of see if I'm getting a lot of slugs.
Okay, don't use stale beer. Use good beer, not expensive beer, fresh beer. You can get the cheapest you want. You can probably even use haposhu. It's no problem, but don't use stale beer. They won't drink it. Just like me. So make sure you put out that fresh beer, and you got to change it every day. Okay, but I'd say do the photo thing first to make sure there's slugs or snails first, because little pinholes doesn't really sound like slugs and snails to me, but it's worth a try. John, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, Chuck, I'm just about the using the beer for gardening. The gardens that my company set up for the Grand Hyatt Tokyo like about 3 or 4 years ago, we had these massive black ants that were basically coming into the raised gardens and chomping the radishes and other leaves. And we basically just put like paper cups full of Asahi Super Dry in each corner of the raised gardens. And because the beer contains sugar, which apparently ants like, they basically climb into the cup and they fall into the cup and drown. So, and we found lots of ants in these paper cups we put in each corner of these raised gardens. Asahi Super Dry, that works. I didn't know about changing it, but I didn't know about changing the beer daily, but it doesn't. that brand works. Asahi.
Asahi Super Dry, not just the
Super Dry. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Well, Brent, I hope that helps you. Feel free to contact both John or I with more questions and let us know how it goes. We hope you can get your problem fixed.
Question from Solveig. Has it been hard to get approval from landowners to repurpose unused areas?
Oh, I'm sorry, we have to go up a bit higher. She asked right after Brent, is there a farmer's market in Kyoto?
Oh, okay, yep.
Solveig, I recommend you take a look online for Kyoto Farmers Market. It's run by a wonderful woman named Mayumi or May, and I don't know her hours anymore. I used to sell vegetables there years and years ago, but no longer. So it's probably still going. Just have a look online. Also, the French Institute usually has a marché once a month. You could probably find that information on their website as well.
What's a marché?
And then marché means market in French, actually.
Oh, okay. Excuse my ignorance.
No, I think that's the only French word I know. So, and she also has, John, do I deliver to local vegan eateries near Demachiyanagi? So I only deliver to customers directly. I don't deliver to restaurants very much. When I do have excess, I have delivered to Cafe Vegini, owned by Tomomi-chan. She's awesome. I recommend that place, Vegini. And I have sold at Totoya, which is a zero waste shop, right on Teramachi near Marutomachi. and a few other places, one at Choice Cafe at Sanjo Keihan Station. Unfortunately, nothing really close to Demachiyanagi. Sorry about that.
I was thinking about falafel, falafel, and there's another
Falafel
vegan
Garden.
restaurant right there.
Yeah, he wants my carrots, but I never have enough for him. Everything else he gets directly. I think he's got a good source. So sorry about that.
No problem.
Let's see. Who's next?
Okay.
Yasmin, can I ask about Japanese growing seasons? John.
I put some comments about that just directly below that question. Yeah. This spring summer growing season normally starts from mid-March and goes until summer. So that's April, May, June. That's about 3.5 months. And then the autumn winter growing season starts usually mid-September. And it usually starts, you can tell when the temperature suddenly drops after basically sort of when summer ends. And that's usually in the middle of September, but it's sort of been getting a bit later these last few years. Last year, I think the temperature noticeably dropped after summer in about the 3rd week of September. And we're talking about basically, is it comfortable to go outside and start gardening? That's my basic #1 criteria. And each year at the end of summer, the temperature suddenly drops, and that's a good time to start. And then you can basically grow food for about 4 months. But like I mentioned in the comment there, plant growth normally stops in mid-November when it just gets too cold for plants to grow. So they won't die, but they'll stop getting bigger. And just something about that, I've in my community garden here in North Tokyo, I've had the entire thing's been covered with a foot of snow for 3 weeks. This was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I thought, oh no, and my whole garden's just a write-off. The plants must all be dead. But when the snow melted about 3 weeks later, all the plants just bounced back up, and I got the largest harvest ever. So they just went into hibernation, and this was in like mid-January, really cold. That was great.
That's part of a lot of the vegetables' life cycle, actually. If you grow onions or garlic, it's like an 8 or 9 month cultivation period, and it has to be over the winter, whether there's snow or not. But something like hardneck garlic and onions, they actually do better if there's snow on them for a month or two, at least. They just somehow, I don't know what happens. There's something magical, or I'm sure it's scientific, but this covered with snow thing is a good thing. And I always plant too many cabbages and daikon and lettuces and kale plants, and they always get covered. I mean, last winter was a huge snow winter, very cold, heavy, wet snow. I thought, I've got nothing left. And it took 2 months to melt off, and then poof, here they come again. So there's a lot of really hardy plants out there that really impress upon us the determination of life and its willingness to be, and how healthy it can be to be a part of that system. So I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, nature's really resilient, especially plants.
That's
yeah.
Right.
Okay, so Solveig's question, has it been hard to get the approval from landowners to repurpose unused areas? I haven't done that yet, but my #1 plan to do that would basically be to ask landowners for an example, car park owners, or people who own or have possession of empty plots of land, like maybe grassy curbs, that kind of thing. And what I basically do is ask them, hey, would you like me to set up a garden here and share the food, so that they would get a direct benefit? And also having a garden as opposed to simply grass or dirt. And we're talking beautification, which would be good news too. So it all comes down to basic convincing people to do nothing but just give you the okay to dig up some ground, plant some food, plant some flowers maybe too. And definitely offer, if I'm going to grow food, say they can take some, maybe split it in 2, so
Good
that
answer,
they get some food. Yeah.
Good answer. Here out in the country, it's really quite easy to get use of land, actually, because like I said, rural depopulation is so high. But still, like John said, you want to go and approach the people first before you put anything in the ground. but also you want to make sure the land is suitable for growing. Don't forget, if you set up a garden somewhere, you're going to need a lot of water. No matter where you are, you're going to need a lot of water. So just any old plot won't do unless you want to haul buckets. And even at my age, just past 51 still, I don't want to haul buckets anymore. I'm too tired and it's too much trouble. So make sure there's a good source of water nearby. And honestly, I think if you're going to beautify the area, as Jon said, and you're going to offer them some vegetables, they'll be keen on the idea. Probably bringing in some photos and some sketches or something like that would be good too.
Sketches are
Just talking about beautification, I've got a Facebook friend who's really into guerrilla gardening. And if you're not sure what guerrilla gardening is, I think it's basically where you randomly and probably illegally drop seeds in public spaces. And my friend, she's basically beautified both sides of the street outside her house by basically just walking down and subtly dropping seeds onto the stretch of soil that lines both sides of her street. And she posted some photos of it last week, and all these massive flowers have bloomed. All these really nice, colorful flowers down both sides of the street. And some of the locals know that she's doing it, and they said, "Wow, thanks for doing this. You've really made a difference."
That's awesome. Now, Solveig has another question. What about exhaust around city plots? Jon, have you ever, just short answer, have you had any issues?
You can't really do much more than just rinse them off with water, maybe soapy water, I'm not quite sure, but you've got to rinse them. Yeah.
And
is there a kind of plant that, how to put it? There are some plants that purify the air more than others.
Yes, I've just been approached by a company that wants to do that, and then in their new office, they basically specifically want plants to extract toxins from the air. But my business partner has done a bit of research about this yesterday, and he found that plants in general can extract about 0.9% of toxins from the air. So it doesn't apparently make a large difference at all. Yeah.
I just did a quick search, Solveig. One of my favorite plant varieties, not only ornamental, but for eating, the chrysanthemum family seems to be one of the leaders in purifying the air. Even though, as Jon said, it may not make as much difference as people want, you could be growing something very ornamental or something to eat. I mean, I love kikuna and I love kikuimo, which are all in the same family, and it's a beautiful plant, great flowers, plus the regular chrysanthemums that are just ornamentals. Why not go for it? I say, if you're interested in that sort of thing, that would probably be a good way to go. Sorry, we are running short of time. Kara has one final question. I think that's going to be our last one for the day. She was at the Minka Summit at Keihoku area. This is where my other farm is. And she said it's a very narrow area with a very narrow valley. And she's asking if there's any challenges of farming in these steeply sloped ravine areas. And can you plant anything on the slopes themselves? Well, planting anything on a slope is going to be tough because of erosion. So you're going to want to build up something almost like steps, kind of like a terraced rice field on a smaller scale, so that you're reducing your soil erosion. Otherwise, every year you're going to be taking all the soil from the bottom and putting it back up on the top after the rainy season. So be careful about that. Make sure you have something like boxed in places like raised beds. And as far as the challenges of farming in these steeply sloped ravine areas, the biggest challenge for me will always be those simian buggers that live up here in Kutski, the monkeys that love to raid my garden and eat absolutely everything in an hour. So that's my biggest challenge. Other than that, what you're talking about is the Satoyama area of Japan, which is where the mountain meets the valley. It's that really special area that a lot believe is somewhat mystical or magical, or at least part of the genesis of a lot of the Japanese food and culture, because it's such a rich environment, combining the two climates, and very heavy in water and good soil. So Jon, I don't know if you have anything to say about these slope growing things.
Not particular. No, that's good. Yeah. Okay. Well, looks like we're pretty much done. Does anyone have any last minute questions before we wrap up? Good. Okay.
Tons, but I'm not going to ask them now.
Send us a message, Solveig, anytime.
Yeah.
Well, it was lovely seeing you all today. As always, I'm really thankful and grateful that Jon can be a part of this. He's a wonderful grower doing wonderful things. I'm learning so much from him. And thank you everybody else for coming. I'm hoping to be able to get this on YouTube. Because my computer cut out there for a minute, I might have lost the first half though. Please forgive me, but at least you got to see it live, which is the best way to go anyway. So Jon, if there's nothing else from you.
No, that's it. No.
All right,
Thanks a lot for coming, and I hope you've all learned something at least to motivate and inspire you to basically get stuck into growing your own food. I know that Solveig does. That's good. Your garden seems to be sort of moving. If you don't know how to grow food, just get in touch. And we hope to see you again online.
We'll probably have another one in a couple of weeks to a month.
Yeah.
And I hope to see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thanks a lot.